It's about halfway through the day now, almost exactly. So yeah, much more to go on afterwards, but this one should be really quite interesting, really quite um, existential potentially, but most excitingly, very interesting. So while some other people are kind of coming through from other sessions, I'm just going to frame what this session is going to be about. It's basically about AI. Don't know if that came across in the title, but obviously AI is the current symptom of where we are right now in the socio-political part of the world. It's obviously a very fast moving aspect of it as well. So it's quite important that we're able to have these discussions to kind of further the conversation about what our part is to play in all of this. Um, so today we will basically be asking the question of how can we democratize big tech? Should there be an AI revolution? And with me, I'm joined with Paul the Plug, connected by data, Foxglove, and Assemble to discuss this. We've got four speakers. We'll be doing a panel today. So if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box, which is at the bottom next to the participants in the chat bit. Otherwise, you can put them in the chat. And once they've done some presentations, we can answer some of their questions. So, without further ado, joining us today, we've got Donald Campbell, who's representing Foxglove, and which is basically a group standing up to tech giants and governments for a future where technology is used to benefit everyone and not just the rich and powerful. Foxglove has been leading several successful court challenges of data center projects in the UK. We've got Frida Lurkin, Paul the Plug founder, Extinction Rebellion co-founder. She helped set up Extinction Rebellion and Rebels in Prison Support and has been involved in a whole flurry of climate campaigns over the last decade. And she's now joined the new grassroots tech campaign, Paul the Plug. We've also got Tim Davis, who's with Connected by Data. Tim Davis has spent the last 20 years working at the intersection of technology, participation, and governance as both a researcher and practitioner. His work spans digital youth participation, public spending transparency, and the politics of open data, all grounded in the belief that shared social challenges demand collective solutions. And we have Samantha Smithson, Sam Smithson, Assemble facilitator, an experienced social and ecological justice campaigner who has a reputation for making the impossible possible through actions, not words. And Sam is Assemble's training and events coordinator. So we got a really interesting panel today, kind of crosses both boundaries of AI and democracy, which is exactly what we're here for. So I'll stop talking. Without further ado, I'll pass over to Donald.
Thanks very much. Hi, everyone. Can you hear okay? Yeah? Check. Cool. I'm afraid I've got a PowerPoint, just to apologize for that. So I'm going to use that to slightly frame a quick run through of Foxglove's work on data centers. I also tacked on some stuff about Palantir, which I think is potentially relevant. Um, but we shall see how it goes. Just let me share this. Can people see that all right? I'm going to run through it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So first of all, yeah, thanks a lot, Ed, for the introduction. Foxglove, we're a non-profit. We work to try to make tech fair for everyone and to push back against abuses of technology by big tech or by the state. Um, as you mentioned, we're currently working on data centers, primarily in the UK at the moment, though we've also just started some work in South Africa. Um, just to give a quick overview of why I think the UK is important, there are a very large number of these very large scale, so-called hyperscale data centers that are currently in the planning system. Some of those use an amount of electricity which is like equivalent just for one site to the entire output of, say, a gas-fired or nuclear power station. So huge demand for energy that comes with very high costs for the public and for the environment in terms of emissions and other environmental impacts, as well as knock-on effects into energy prices, things like that. The government here is concerningly close to the big tech industry, is kind of encouraging, frankly, what feels like a kind of gold rush of data centers without really thought for the impact, and there's the risk that, yeah, big tech is basically able to extract profit while expecting the public and the planet to carry the costs. Um, and then I'll just do a quick run through of our approach. So we look at kind of three areas. There's a core kind of legal action to our work, and then we do communications and advocacy and campaigning around that. Um, we've had yeah, some success, some welcome success so far with our legal challenges. So I'll try not to get too into the weeds on this one, but basically a local authority turned down a bid to build a data center. The central government then called that in and said, no, you can't do that. We're overturning your decision and pushing it through. We challenged that government decision on the basis that they'd failed to carry out proper scrutiny and assessment of the environmental impact. Um, I think a matter of days before it was due to get to a hearing earlier this year, the government conceded and said, yeah, actually, you know what, we did get that decision wrong and backed down. They admitted they'd made a serious error in the decision around failing to put in place kind of proper safeguards, I suppose, proper concrete measures to try to mitigate the environmental harm of the data center. So that's, yeah, a really encouraging start, but obviously, and it's an important precedent, but obviously there are plenty of other efforts to build data centers. There are still plenty of problems with the government's approach and policy in this area. So it's very much a live and ongoing area of work for us. Um, Other things we've been trying to do are around kind of raising awareness of just how vast the impact of these data centers can be. So there have been conversations around water use. A lot of these things are kind of flying under the radar or were until now. And then just kind of comparisons again, like I mentioned, in terms of just yeah, in a way, how big tech's kind of sailing in and wiping out all the small progress we've made towards reducing emissions in the country. Um, I think then what I'd want to flag just in terms of why I think it's an interesting moment at the moment, and I'm afraid the policy language is very dull about around this, but it's very important. There's something the government is meant to be producing called a national policy statement on data centers that should open to kind of public consultation. So there'll be an opportunity for people to submit their views on that. We're not quite sure what's happened to it. It's meant to come out a couple of months ago, but then again, the government is slightly chaotic on this issue, so maybe they're still trying to kind of get things in line. But that is potentially quite a big moment for kind of determining what the government's wider policy is on construction of data centers. There's also an inquiry that's just recently opened from a committee in the House of Commons, again into the impact of data centers. So I think it's an issue that's got a kind of growing level of scrutiny around it, and there is important opportunities aside from just on the specific local projects for people to make voices heard at a national level. I think the aim was just to do, I can talk about Palantir a bit, but should I go on or am I up against time?
Mm, you've got about a minute left. Yeah.
I'll do with it. Do with it. So one other area we're working on is Palantir. I mean, people may have heard of this firm already. Basically, it's a very worrying one. I've put some of the more choice comments from its founder and chair, Peter Thiel, up there. Doesn't think freedom and democracy are compatible. He thinks the NHS makes people unwell. This is a firm that mysteriously has been given a huge contract with the UK's NHS and also has growing contracts with other parts of the state, so Ministry of Defence, local government leasing. It's a firm that I put that kind of ad up there that they have. It's very open about its interest in dominating the world and the US dominating the world. So it's a very serious question about whether this big tech AI firm that has a background in the more unsavory end of policing, security, military, should really be given an increasingly central role in UK public services. Again, it's an important moment now because the NHS contract that it has a break clause moment next year. So that's a point at which the government could bring it to an end if they choose to. They have, because of increased scrutiny and kind of public concern recently, said they're looking at how they can do that. So there's, yeah, quite a key moment to get Palantir, or an opportunity to get Palantir at least out of one part of the UK public services that are coming up. So yeah, relevant just now. And I will stop there, I think. Thank
Thank you
you.
very much, Donald. That was brilliant. Yeah, Palantir, who also the head of Palantir in the UK, is the grandson of Oswald Mosley, who was the head fascist in the UK for many years. So they keep good company. Um, great, thank you so much. Right, let's move next on to Frida.
Thank you. I wasn't organized enough to make a slideshow, so I'll just use my hands a lot. So I'm Frida. I'm from Pull the Plug, and Pull the Plug is a small campaign but with big ambitions that started around December time, so quite recently. And really, we came out of this realization that AI is suddenly everywhere. It's cropping up in every single aspect of our lives relentlessly, and at no point has anyone in this country ever been asked if we want AI to crop up in every single aspect of our lives, what we want it to look like, and how we would want an ethical AI to be developed. So this is kind of where our campaign has come from, and I mean, everyone here will probably be aware of this already because it feels like AI is in the news like every single day, if not every single hour at the minute. But it's definitely here. It's here already. Decisions about what it should look like are being made right now, and ordinary people who are at the using end of AI are not being asked what they would want that to look like. So if we just talk about work, which is something that comes up a lot, and often there's a lot of speculation around whether, is AI going to steal my job? Well, is it really as powerful as some people make it out to be? I think something important to keep in mind is that there are already people in the UK right now who are losing work because of the way AI is used in their sector. So a third of illustrators in the UK have reported lost commissions, and 58% of photographers. A whopping 73% of musicians in the UK say that unregulated AI threatens their ability to earn a living. And the perverse thing about all of this is that obviously the very AI that is threatening their livelihoods was trained on their data, on their work without their consent. So it's just to be honest, it's quite mind blowing. It's just an outrageous step, like maybe one of the most outrageous steps of all time. And something Pull the Plug has been doing is just to collect testimonies from people who have actually directly been affected by AI in their work. So I just wanted to read one out that we published quite recently because I think it summarizes it where quite a lot of people are at quite well. As a freelancer who writes about the climate and nature emergency, I've been shocked by how quickly and how widely generative AI has been embraced, in spite of everything we know about how much energy and water it consumes, as well as the biases it's prone to replicating and the mistakes it's prone to making. Its use is now common even across sustainability and education sectors. I didn't anticipate how severely it would affect my ability to find work and sustain an income. Clients are choosing not to pay for writing and research when there are free tools offering to provide this in an instant. Some have fed my words into AI models that have been used to write like me, but to say things I wouldn't. Yeah, I'm not going to go much more on about this, but it's just the ultimate disempowerment of your work being stolen and you then losing your job as an consequence of that. But this is really only one of the areas where AI is just showing up. Like only this year, we heard the statistic, I think, that 1 in 4 teenagers in the UK now uses chatbots for their mental health support. We've had the massive Grok notification scandal earlier this year, and there continue to be AI tools out there that help to create sexual abuse imagery of, well, mostly women and children. Um, this year, autonomous self-driving cars are going to be introduced in London for the first time. Police forces are increasingly using AI. There were some big headlines in the last couple of weeks because facial recognition is increasingly being used in shops, and people have been called out for theft that they have never had anything to do with. And so there's this whole thing that's just exploding right now. And the thing that's really blowing my mind is just that a technology that is so prone to making mistakes, like famously prone to making mistakes all the time, has just become embedded in every single aspect of our life and in our most essential infrastructure. And I guess sometimes people will say, well, you're sounding like a bit of a Luddite, dare I say it. And this has always been the case. New technology arrives, people get scared of it. This is the way the world rolls, and if you don't like it, then don't just don't use it, tough, you know. But the reason why the argument is a bit bad is because we're all getting to pay the price of poorly regulated AI if we want it or not. And this is sort of mostly referring to one of the things that Donald talked about earlier, which is the huge rollout of infrastructure around AI. I think sometimes when we use AI on our screens, like the way we think about it is just, this thing that it just exists. AI just exists somewhere in the clouds, and it's just virtual, and it doesn't. But really, there's huge infrastructure that is being built, has been built, and is being built and planned right now in order to make this possible. And I think what we've heard a lot about is about the huge amounts of electricity that data centers use, that drive the computing and the cloud storage for AI. And that is true. And that really matters, given that we're supposed to be in a climate emergency. Somehow we've stopped to talk about that, but we were supposed to bring carbon emissions down. Apparently, that's not an issue anymore. But it's a huge issue that data centers have huge electricity emissions, use water that in some areas where they're being built is really scarce. They're being built in areas where there is nature right now, which is already very rare in the UK. It's being built in areas where new housing could be built instead, which is also sadly very rare in the UK right now. So these are all things that we maybe think a lot about. But the other thing is also that all the materials that are used to build data center infrastructure is not being used elsewhere. And it's massively driving up the price of so many minerals, of memory chips. There's a crisis right now with a huge shortage of memory chips around the world. So every time we ask, Gen AI, what would I look like if I was a K-pop demon hunter in space or something? That uses memory chips, and which is fun and good, except then those chips are not being used in all our electronic appliances that we use every day, and in areas where they actually really need it, like in scientific technology or in medical technology. So the question here really isn't, why are we using AI for such silly things that use up so much energy and so many minerals that are very rare and needed? But why is the structural rollout of this technology driven by a few big tech companies that are just gang-ho going away ahead with this, with next to no regulation, and everyone else is just constantly walking behind them, trying to clean up after the mess they caused, but releasing technology that isn't ready yet to be released? Do I have a bit more time, Ed? I'm almost there. I'm almost there. No, I'm out of time. No. Okay, so basically, pull the plug. This is what pull the plug is all about. We're thinking that when politicians are failing to regulate big tech because they meet with them every day, because they have expectations of the money that they get from big tech, you need ordinary people who see that technology in their own lives to get a say in what that technology should look like. And that is our demand as a campaign. We call for citizens' assemblies on AI in the UK. And I think sometimes people, often the argument that I guess, oh, people aren't experts, people don't really know enough about technology. But I think when you speak to people around you, everyone knows what uses of technology in their lives they feel comfortable with and what they don't feel comfortable with. And right now, they're just not being asked. Like, so many people predicted that there would be an issue if you made a tool that could notify people. So many people predicted it. Like, so many people right now are saying, I feel really uneasy about so many children using Gen AI as a friend. And I'm going to tell you, in a couple of years, there's going to be loads of results around how that resulted in, like, bad mental health outcomes and dependence on technology. So let's listen to people right now when they already have these worries, rather than waiting for until it's too late. Okay, so what does pull the plug do? We basically want to empower people to take action around AI and big tech. So we don't just sit at home, sort of looking at our privacy settings and trying to sort of disentangle ourselves from this sort of big thing that is called big tech. We organized the biggest protest around AI in the UK history in February. And right now we're just organizing lots of little acts of resistance. We want to empower people to take acts of resistance around big tech where it shows up for them in their lives. So we've posted some big tech offices in the UK. We put up an arms stall outside Palantir, the Palantir offices, which were much appreciated. On the 11th of June, this is something that I'm so sorry, I'm so close to finishing it. This is something that Donald's already mentioned. there is this really important break clause coming up in the contract between NHS and Palantir. And this June, there's going to be the biggest NHS conference of the year in Manchester on the 11th of June. It is super important to us that there's not just health workers there, but also patients. Anyone is an NHS user. Anyone should be there, and saying that we don't want Palantir in the NHS, because all the NHS bigwigs and policymakers are going to be at that conference in Manchester. I'm going to share some more links about that. It would be great to see everyone there. We're building a data center campaign around London right now, because there's a big moment coming up when a London plan is going to announce what data centers in London are going to look like going forward. Look out for that. There's a group of academics and students that are getting organized, and I'm going to stop there because I'm out of time. But right now, really important decisions are made, and we're going to regret it if we let big tech companies and the guys in government make those decisions on their own. So join Pull the Plug and don't let them. Thank you.
Thank you, Frida. Yeah, Pull the Plug sound great. Everyone should check them out at pulltheplug.uk. No bias at all. Great. Now we'll pass over to Tim. Tim, if you'd like to go.
Yeah, fantastic. So I will try and share with you a bit of a story of what can happen when we are listening to people, but also explore some of the challenges that raises along the way, but putting people in democratic control, because those issues that Frida's describing, companies will turn around and say, well, we consented to it. We all tick the box, the consent. We all sort of use those tools, but fundamentally, and connected by data's fundamental origin is individual consent doesn't legitimize these platforms. We need collective decision making. We need to find ways to exercise collective choice and power over tools. And we talk about good governance of tech involving 5 elements. It needs to be democratic. It needs to be involving those who are affected. It needs to be participatory, getting everyone involved in conversation, not just one-off choices, but deliberating together in a deliberative process that is inclusive of many voices and is ultimately connected to power, is powerful in its impact. So how do we create those forms of democratic governance when we have vast big tech firms, often in cahoots with government, setting the agenda? The story for us started in 2023 when Rishi Sunak called an AI safety summit at Bletchley Park, with very few civil society participants there, absolutely no citizens. So we took an outsider track and we said we're going to still convene a small citizens jury, the People's Panel on AI, on the outside of that process. So we, with the Sortition Foundation, found 12 members of the public, 11 were able to join us in the end, to come to London while that summit was going on, to take part in fringe events, to watch the webcast, to speak to experts who were in London for the summit, to go from some members of that group having no use of AI, no experience of it before, no smartphones, others who were kind of using this in their daily work, those 12 people, 11 people coming together in conversation and then deliberating on their vision for what should these summits, these gatherings, these processes be doing, providing their own review of that process. And it was really instructive that they're saying we have a process here that's talking about how we mitigate the effects of a tech that isn't delivering any benefit to us. What we didn't ask for it, as has been said. If we are going to have this tech, can we set the agenda for what it should be delivering? You know, people often in this conversation say some of these healthcare benefits, that's appealing. We want to see that invested in. But some of these other tools that we're being offered, you know, they're not convincing and setting the agenda. And the People's Panel on AI came out with a number of recommendations and themes that, in Connected by Data's work, we've then continued to follow up on. And I'll put some links in chat in a moment to show some of the work that's come out of those 4 days of conversation. The first was around building awareness and capacity amongst the wider population of what's going on with AI, because those members of the public said 4 days engaging with the kind of frontier debate was eye-opening, and there were so many conversations they wanted to take back into their communities and have with colleagues, and that's led to launched a few weeks ago the Let's Talk AI campaign of cartoons, bus stop based adverts, things to reach out not to the people who are the AI early adopters, but the people who are feeling the sense that this is changing what's happening to my doctor's surgery. This is changing what's happened when I access public services, or changing stuff at my kid's school, but I don't really feel I can talk about it. Breaking that down and giving people a space so you can have conversations about this. You don't need to understand the innards of the technology or how it works to have an opinion on what it's doing, and whether regardless in some extent of that big data center question behind, which we also deeply care about, but regardless of that, is this delivering the kind of change in your society that you want to see delivered, and how can you have that conversation at the community level? So Let's Talk AI's been doing some of that work, and that's also led us to think, how do we have these conversations in schools between students and teachers? Can we create resources that help have a classroom conversation to set the norms about what we want to use and not use? And when last year we ran a distributed dialogue on generative AI in education, really eye-opening for many teachers, where students were saying, look, we don't want these tools introduced if they get in the way of our relationship with you as a teacher. So lots of the time teachers think, well, we can do some more lesson planning, we can give you more personalized responses through AI tools, and students come back and saying, no, we don't mind using this for our revision, but we don't want to replace the personalization that comes from our relationship with the trained practitioner, the teacher, with a tech tool. Very counter to what's coming from government agendas of AI tutors for every classroom, or for catch up and so on, that just comes when you create space for conversation about what tech we're introducing, rather than accept the top-down vision of maybe how this tech promises to solve problems. Similarly, creating conversations in the workplace. We've been doing lots of work with trade unions of how do you open up that space to say how to exercise the collective bargaining muscle in talking about AI when it's introduced. And I often use the analogy now of, if in your workplace you suddenly moved from having offices to an open plan space, your work desks were rearranged, that would be a change of working practice that you would expect to have a conversation with management about. You would expect to be a point of debate, of worker involvement. Yet when Copilot's turned on and you're told you're now using this tool to take notes in all your meetings or write your letters, that's a change in your working practice that should be similarly debated and discussed in the workplace, and that you should have rights to have a say over. And so what we also find in all of this is, when people have that chance to both debate with each other, to see different viewpoints, to be competent judges through experience of using tools, but critical space to reflect on them, they often come to a much more kind of nuanced sense of, yeah, there's some things we want to explore. There's some tech futures we want to engage in, not a sort of stop all the tech position, but a position that says we definitely don't need to be headlong into this as solution to everything. We need to be much more critical and create that space to push back. The last bit I'll mention that came out of that people's panel in the UK was a desire for much more global governance as well. And I know our conversation is going to focus on what we can do in this country, but a real recognition that this is a global issue as well, and we need to be in solidarity with communities right across the globe. And that led us at Connected by Data to do two pieces of work. One is the Participatory AI Research and Practice Symposium Pairs, which again I'll put a link in chat to a wonderful collection of 10-minute videos of people right across the world talking about how they are engaging communities, grassroots networks of women entrepreneurs in Uganda, dialogues across Latin America, work in India at the grassroots of helping people have conversations about what they want or not from AI in their futures. And that's been for us a really inspiring space to say the grassroots conversations to exercise democratic control and collective control are growing, but we need to foster them, strengthen them, kind of build them further. And we've also been working a lot on a project called the Citizens Track on AI to say, how can we, in the emerging global governance of AI institutions. There's a new UN Global Forum on AI governance starting in July this year. How can we say not just the voice of tech companies and governments and organized civil society, but also direct citizen voice needs to be shaping the narrative and the agenda for what we want from the governance of this tech in future. And it needs to be broad across work shaping the development of emerging tech. And there are good ways to get people involved in shaping what we build, shaping the governance of that technology. What rules should we be putting in place, whether those are planning rules for the data centers or rules about what's used in schools and workplaces and what rights you have to push back. And participatory processes of resistance as well, of kind of fostering the kinds of work that Pull the Plug and others are doing, that again is rooted, wonderfully recursive in many ways, that's rooted in those discussions that mean people want to resist. And the demand is then we need more democracy in how we take this tech forward. So I'm really looking forward to the discussion, touching on any elements that of there that fit in.
Great, thank you, Tim. Yeah, I'm personally shocked to find out that regular people understand emotional connection and what regular people want over the tech giants. Great, right. Now over to Sam, who will finish up the panel discussions, and we will then go into a few questions. So Sam, over to you.
Hello, everyone. That was super rich. So much information coming out from different people. So yeah, really excited and happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me. I'm actually coming from a very different background and less on focus on AI and more on democracy. So I'm from an organization called Assemble, and we're trying to fight for communities to have a voice, to find their democratic rights and identity, and bring communities together so that they can tackle things like inequality, rising fascism, climate breakdown. We've got all these polycrises happening around us globally and locally and nationally. And so to address some of that, it starts in the heart of where we're at in our communities. So that means hosting assemblies, and that's what we're all about, assemblies, getting people talking about these big issues. And last year we hosted something called the House of the People, which was this citizens assembly, grassroots organised on big top issues that came out of the people's assemblies around the country. And that really helped us form like the project that we are working on going forward. Yeah, it will come out later on in the conversation as to what that is, but to keep you on your toes, I'm not going to tell you yet. So to bring it back to AI, I just wanted to contextualize the frame where I'm coming from. So I'm not an expert on AI, I don't claim to be, but what I understand is that there's some real big issues. People, as Frida mentioned, aren't being asked. They don't have any sort of like everyone has an opinion, but we're not able to like contribute to what's happening. We're just getting it fed to us by the elites, and we don't fully understand. And the stuff that we do understand is really fucking scary. You know, we're talking about surveillance, and we're talking about water through the technology. It's obviously we're facing water bankruptcy, environmentally speaking, and so the technology is massively taking huge amounts of water that's going to like jeopardize that. We're talking about huge, obviously, economics ripples through job displacements, as Frida mentioned already. And then we've also got the military complex, which of course we've got this really scary stuff where AI is powering all these weapons that are operating without any meaningful human control, which is really, really scary to all of us, right? And so the people behind that are elites, right? The billionaire state that are controlling and profiteering off this. And that is really, really petrifying. And so really, we need to have an honest conversation about how we can democratize AI, how we can have legislation in place, because there is nothing in this country to protect anyone at the moment from what's going on, and people's identities are being stolen and rearranged and changed and all sorts of scary stuff. So essentially, surprisingly, I'm calling for a citizens assembly as well, right? So obviously Assemble is all about that. As we hosted one last year, we know full well that they have real power and legitimacy to hear people where they're at. They're informed by experts, so you have different people from different disciplines that like come to the table and explain the different parts of the pie, let's say on AI, and really help us understand over the course of several days or several months And then what you have is discussions, meaningful discussions in small groups. It's sortition based. So what that means is you have a random selection of people that match the demographics of your society, right? Which means massive, like basically equality is no issue in this space, right? Because everyone is on an even keel playing field and everyone's represented. And it represents society, demographically speaking. And so you get into small groups and you have honest discussions about these different issues as you've been through that process of education and being informed about the problems and also some of the key solutions. And then you have like a massive ideation stage where you can really get creative and come up with some great solutions based on, ping-ponging it with the different experts in these small groups. Then you come together collectively at the end and share that with the wider group. Normally it's around 100 people, 150 people, depending on the size of the scale of the citizens assembly you're trying to achieve. And then the output, you create a people's charter. So we did this last year, and it created 5 key demands. And then you can take that forward to be building pressure on the state, or indeed, what we really love is, of course, the government to implement the Citizens' Assembly, right? That model should be part of our processing, our decision-making process. That should be replacing something like the House of Lords. It's completely out of date, right? And later, this is the announcement, later this year, we'll be hosting a Citizens' Assembly on AI. Woo! Really exciting stuff. And yeah, that's it. I'm going to pass back to Ed now. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sam. So what we'll do now is we've got time for roughly 2 questions, and then we can just make sure we can get some answers from each of the panel. So the first question is one from the audience, which is, do you see a need for new literacy for the public to understand what AI is, its impact, and how to use it? And if so, what should it be focusing on first, i.e. like environmental, economical type issues? I'll open this up to anyone, or I will pick on someone. So if anyone would like to go first, then let me know.
I can come in briefly if useful, and again, I'll put another link in chat in a moment to an open letter we did earlier this year when the government announced their kind of AI skills program, which is entirely skills to use AI with no presence of critical skills and is heavily inflected with industry sponsorship for that skill building and so on. So I think absolutely we need to focus on literacy building. It needs to be a focus that puts AI in perspective. So one of the challenges is when you do the kind of literacy building, how do you do that in a way that isn't marketing and promotion for the AI kind of industry, but is how do we live in a world where this technology is emerging? I talk in some of the work I do about the need for perspective, for use, for refusal, responding to AI and reshaping AI. We need literacies to do all of those things, not just literacy to be able to use. And I think to the question of what should it be focusing on, what we've found in a lot of public conversations, we need to start from where people are at. So people have many different things that they want to talk about. Absolutely, we need to be able to zoom in to what's happening locally and zoom out to the environmental, social, economic, and political. But really, we need to start from people's lived experience of what's happening around them, these technologies that are creeping into everything that they've not been given chance to stop, pause, and kind of reflect on. And I think some of that also, though, we have to avoid the kind of reification of AI alone and say this is data AI digitization. This is part of a longer trend, and the kind of current wave of AI tries to present itself as only a frontier. It's absolutely different, and yet it's part of a longer trend that we need to kind of connect it to.
Thank you very much, Tim. Very well answered. I'll pass it over to Frida.
Yeah, I haven't said something in at least a couple of minutes. I agree with everything that Tim said, and I think maybe something I just want to add is that it shouldn't stop with the education, and I think that's where right now, at least in the UK, I see maybe a little bit of a how do you say, a vacuum where like I have met so many people who want to take action as well and want to do something, and I think there's a bit of a risk of the sort of tech movement doing what maybe the climate movement did wrong a couple of years ago, when we focused so much on what in your individual life you can do to have a, a lower climate footprint. And I see so many people obsessing over, what browser should I use? Is there something like an ethical chatbot? What search engine should I use? Da 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 da. And firstly, it's really difficult and very time intensive to do all of these things. But also, realistically, that's not how you're going to claim power over anything. So do those things, and have discussions about those things. But let's think about how we can also organize within our communities around a more structural way of reclaiming our tech than just changing our sort of individual consumption.
Thank you, Frida. And yeah, don't forget the carbon footprint was created by BP. So yeah, focus on the people who are actually causing this fucking nonsense. All right, next question. What makes you hopeful that the way we interact with tech in this country could change for the better? Sam or Donald, would you like to take this one? Or if not, then anyone else? Donald.
Yeah.
Sam, on you go. You were going to start. I'll go after.
Sure. What makes me hopeful? So, I mean, AI is a tool, so it can be used for a force of good as well, right? It's not what you do, it's the way that you do it. But that's why it needs honest conversation. In the wrong hands, it can be completely misused. I think the answer is obviously community assemblies. So I think if we have more community assemblies, people on the streets can get together, have a conversation, and then take action collectively and go down to the NHS with Frida and pull the plug.
Thank you, Sam and Donald.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it links back a bit to the previous question, which is I think what we've seen is that when people get access to information that's reasonably reliable or that shows them a bit what's going on, so whether that's, the data center that's planned in their area, or kind of the impact of AI in other areas, they kind of grasp that, and it feels like there's a lot of energy out there for people who do want to make sure their voices are heard and that the harms that could result from this are understood. So I think, the more of that kind of information that can be made available to people, and crucially, I think, like someone said, that the kind of education around AI is not only coming from the companies that are best placed to profit from it. I think more of that can happen, the more there's a chance to shift things in a better direction. And yeah, like I said at the beginning, there are some of these key moments coming up. There is response, at least from the government, of some of these points. So there's definitely scope for effective pressure, I think, and mobilisation.